So I'm going to begin. I want to thank you and welcome all of you. Those of you who are joining us again from yesterday, thank you for staying with us. And those of you just joining us for the first time today, we hope that you'll stay with us the rest of the week. We have morning sessions every day, and we also have some evening movie screenings, and we've placed those links in the chat box if you want to copy paste those links. So thank you and welcome and happy Earth Fest. We are so excited to be able to bring Earth Fest to you this week. I do want to start off by letting you know that UTRGV's strategic plan actually includes sustainable development as one of the critical tools for their core priority, which is student success. And when we consider sustainable development, for us, sustainable development revolves around the United Nations 17 Goals for Sustainable Development. These goals were established in 2015 to address all the concerns that we're facing today on a global level. And so when we talk about sustainability, sustainability is actually a problem-solving approach, and its core concept is to protect the three systems that we live in. Its core concept is to protect our environment, our environmental system, our social system, and our economic system. Our environmental system being our natural resources and our planet. Our social system being all of humanity, protecting all of humanity, and our economic system being profit, but not greedy profit. Profit that specifically protects people and planet. And so when you look at these 17 goals, you can actually divide them up into those three core concepts. And so you have your sustainable development goals that protect the environment, those that protect the economy, and those that protect society and protect humanity. So this week, what we've decided to do is to focus on those 5 environmental sustainable development goals, because after all, they are about protecting our natural resources, protecting the planet. And so that is what we are celebrating this month for Earth Month, is protecting our planet. Although we should be protecting it every day, and we should celebrate it every day. So we have a wonderful, wonderful day or morning planned out for you with several of our very talented students and faculty who are going to share with you some of the things that they are doing in contribution to Sustainable Development Goal number 15, which is life on land and the protection of our life on land. So you're going to hear from each and every one of them. And I do ask that you please wait till the end and that you submit your questions on the Q&A box or the chat box, whichever is easier for you. We prefer them on the Q&A box if you can, because then our faculty or students can answer you directly in that area. So we're going to get started first and foremost with the definition or understanding what Sustainable Development Goal number 15 is. And I'm going to ask Davey to help us out by sharing that video. Davey, if you would please go ahead and start that video so that we can go on with the program. Thank you.
Protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystems, sustainably manage forests, combat desertification, halt and reverse land degradation, and halve biodiversity loss. Forests and mountains are the main source of food. They provide air and clean water and constitute the habitat of millions of animal and vegetable species. They are indispensable. As well, around 1.6 billion people depend on forests for their subsistence, but they are threatened by our activity. Each year, 13 million forest hectares disappear, and 22% of species known as animals are at risk of extinction. Can you imagine having to describe to your children and grandchildren what the forests were like? That should never have to happen. Something very valuable is at risk. We should boost the use of sustainable terrestrial ecosystems, mainly through the fight against deforestation and soil degradation. It's our responsibility to repair the caused harm. The inhabitants of the Madhya Pradesh state of India have beat the world record of tree planting. 66 million in 12 hours, not more or less. From students to governors, everybody was involved in the reforestation of a very harmed area, as well as entering the World Guinness Record Book. In the Paris Agreement, India committed to recover 95 million hectares of forests before 2030. Its government has invested more than 6 billion in achieving that aim, but it must be fast. India is one of the most polluted countries in the world. Did you know that you can help to save our forests? 1. Try to make your bank transactions online instead of using printed receipts. Avoid paper cups. Print double-sided. Less consumption of paper means less harm for the forests. 2. Use alternative materials to wood, such as Duralmond, made with nutshells, hemp, or straw. 3. Convert into a principal the FSC certificate. Let's keep on encouraging the responsible management of our forests. 4. When finished reading this, plant a virtual tree. Social networks and web foundations distribute a lot of campaigns of the sort. 5. Take care of the forests through environmental volunteering, a great educational and healthy activity for a world with plenty of trees and the possibility of breathing calmly.
Thank you, Davy, for sharing that video with us. So now that we know what Sustainable Development Goal number 15 is about, I want to share a project with you from our MSA Science Academy. This is our UTRGV Math and Science Academy. It's where our students are dually enrolled from high school with UTRGV. And last semester, they came to me and asked if they could form an Ambassadors for Sustainability Club and work on a project. So we worked together and they decided to map out the 17 goals for sustainable development in the Rio Grande Valley. And so they created teams and they each selected a goal. And this is a presentation from Amrit Bacta and Michael de los Santos. Now, this is a work in progress. So they're going to give you a presentation and share with you all the data they collected of all the corporations, agencies, nonprofit organizations, anyone who here in the Rio Grande Valley is actually working to contribute to the protection of life on land. Our hope is that after next semester, we'll be done with all 17 goals, and we're going to have an interactive map on the website where you can find all those resources specific to each goal. So I'm very proud of them because they did an amazing job this semester. Actually, next week, they'll be presenting, their teams will be presenting each of their goals. So I'm going to invite you to that as well, and I'll share that with all of you as the week ends so that we can get past Earth Week, and then you can come and watch them present on the new goals they chose. So Davey, if you could please share with us their presentation, I appreciate it. And by the way, they're in class, so they're not with us today.
My name is Amr Bhakta.
And my name is Miguel de los Santos.
And this is our presentation on terrestrial sustainability in the Rio Grande Valley. So, starting off, our goal is to discover the various organizations that support terrestrial ecosystems located across the Rio Grande Valley. Plain and simple, we believe advocating these beliefs is worthwhile for the sustainability of the RGV in both the environmental and economic facets of its cities and counties. We believe spreading awareness of the numerous organizations spread throughout the RGV will promote public awareness and, as a result, help curb the declining biodiversity.
Moving on, what is terrestrial sustainability and why are we searching for it? Put simply, terrestrial sustainability can best be described as any and all actions directed towards the goal of protecting and supporting the natural ecosystems that make up the non-aquatic regions of the Earth, or more specifically in our case, the Rio Grande Valley. We do this in order to create long-lasting and efficient systems that will hopefully be carried out to both the near and far future. Our goal to discover various eco-friendly organizations is in response to Goal 15, of which we can be colloquially referred to as Life on Land.
Before we begin describing the numerous organizations, we would like to preface that the address, contact information, and website will be present at the bottom of the slide. The Valley Nature Center is a nonprofit organization nestled within Gibson Park. Although only 6 acres large, this center provides nothing short of the educational opportunities that foster appreciation and understanding of the unique flora and fauna of the RGV. The Estero Llano Grande State Park boasts over 5 miles of trails to explore nature, such as 340 species of birds. This park is part of the World Birding Center chain, a collection of 9 parks scattered throughout the RGV.
La Sal de Rey, or the King's Salt, is a 530-acre lake of deposited salt. The lake is surrounded by approximately 5,000 acres of grassland and is recognized as a site of international significance by the Western Hemisphere Shoebird Reserve. Next, we have the Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge. It is managed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service. This park boasts 2,088 acres of land that was originally established in 1943 for the protection of migratory birds. In addition, this refuge is a host to more than 300 species of butterflies.
Lower Rio Grande Valley National Wildlife Refuge is managed by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. This park contains many acres of land that was originally established in 1979 for the protection of biodiversity of the area's land. It follows the last 275 miles of the Rio Grande River and connects dozens of independent owned tracts, as well as the other state parks in the area. The Benson Rio Grande Valley State Park is part of the World Birding Center chain. This location consists of approximately 2,000 acres of protected land that is home to 360 species of birds and butterflies.
Next, we have the National Butterfly Center. It is a 100-acre nonprofit park that was created for the preservation of the countless butterfly species that migrate through the South Texas every year. This center was founded by the North American Butterfly Association. Next is the Resaca de la Palma State Park. It is the largest of the 9 parks that make up the Rio Grande Valley's World Birding Center. With over 1,200 acres of semi-tropical land, this area provides habitat and sanctuary for many species of birds that migrate through the area every year.
The Laguna Atascosa National Wildlife Refuge encompasses the largest wildlife refuge in the lower Rio Grande Valley, with over 97,000 astounding acres of protected land and habitat spanning along the coast of the Rio Grande Valley and is bordered with Mexico. On top of being a sanctuary for countless bird species, this park is also home to the largest population of endangered ocelots in the entire United States of America. Located in the Roma Historic District, Roma Bluffs beautiful brings together the mid-1950s architecture that hints at a once sprawling and vibrant steamboat port. The scenic 3 acres of riverside land provides more than ample opportunities to experience the countless species of birds that rely on the bluffs as a sanctuary as they migrate through the area. It is one of the 9 World Birding Centers located in the Rio Grande Valley.
Next, we have the South Padre Island Birding and Nature Center. It is oriented on one of the world's longest barrier islands and is a host to about 50 acres of coastal habitat. And it's home to the South Padre Island's local birds and lush and vibrant local fauna. This center strives to educate and preserve the natural habitat of the island and the bay's ecosystems. It's one of the 9 parks that make up the World Birding Center. Next, we have McAllen's Quinta Mazatlan. It's a 20-acre property that contains a 10,000 square foot adobe mansion, as well as nearly 15 acres of birding land that is sanctuary to the migratory birds that populate and pass through South Texas. The center sees itself as having a mansion on a mission to educate the local people about the importance of environmental care and stewardship. It is one of the 9 parks that make up the World Birding Center.
Moving on, we have the old Hidalgo Pump House, which is home to an early look at how the city of Hidalgo became. As the World Birding Center states, an agricultural powerhouse by use of the steam-powered irrigation pumps, one of which has been converted into a museum. Along with its mission, historical education, the center also strives to provide the local bird population with a refuge by which they can take sanctuary as they migrate through the area. The Arroyo Colorado is situated in the lower Rio Grande Valley which is primarily used as a conduit or floodway for wastewater conveyance. In addition, many fishermen use this as a recreational area. The woodlands surrounding Arroyo Colorado are approximately 95 acres wide, providing a large yet rare refuge for birds. This park, or this river, is one of the 9 locations of the World Birding Center chain.
Next, we have Edinburgh Scenic Wetlands and World Birding Center. Although this birding center may be small in size, its extensive nature walks make it a very breathtaking place to view. This park is located in the heart of Edinburgh's wetlands. During the winter months, approximately 13 different duck species migrate over the freshwater lagoons. In addition, 6 acres of flowering beds provide the butterflies for nectar. This location is one of the 9 centers of the World Birding Center. Okay, moving on. We have many other organizations and events that focus on improving the environment as a whole. For example, we have Rio Reforestation. It is an annual public event hosted by the RGV National Wildlife Refuge that invites the public to plant trees in land that has lost its vegetative surroundings. We also have the South Texas Refuge, Complex, and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. It manages the state parks located in the Rio Grande Valley, specifically the Laguna Tascosa, Lower Rio Grande Valley Wildlife Refuge, and Santa Ana National Wildlife Refuge. Next, we have the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. The goal of this organization is to protect Texas public health while keeping natural resources consistent with sustainable economic development.
If you want to learn of all 17 goals set by the United Nations General Assembly in 2015, feel free to visit the listed website for additional information. Thank you.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, our students are not with us today because they are in class, but we do have the director for the MSA Ambassadors for Sustainability, Ms. Melissa Peña. I don't know, Davey, if you're able to unmute her, if there's anything she'd like to add to these presentations. Ms. Peña, are you there so that you can maybe share a few words about the students and the work that they're doing?
Yes, Ms. Franklin, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I know our students have dedicated a lot of time to this research and worked along Ms. Franklin and making these goals possible. So we do thank also Ms. Franklin for her leadership and guiding our students through this process. I know one student reached out with the desire to do research in sustainability, and after all that, we got maybe 15 to 20 students that are active right now doing research. So we're super excited for our students. We are sad that they couldn't be with us today, but I know they're getting ready for finals. So we did understand that they had, class schedule difficulties to join us, but they did allow us to show the research because they did put a lot of time and efforts into their research in the past semester, and they continue to do it this semester as well. But thank you again for listening to our students and the research that they have found here in the RGV, and to Ms. Franklin for her leadership as well.
Thank you, Ms. Peña. I really appreciate it. So with that, we're going to move on with the program. But before we do, I do want to ask you if there's any organization or nonprofit organization or agency that you feel should be as part of this sustainable development goal within the Rio Grande Valley, please put it in the chat. Please help the students, make sure that they have a comprehensive report so that when we do put up the map, you can feel that you had a part and you contributed in part of this project. So thank you all. And for those of you who can, please share your knowledge, because we really appreciate it if you would. So with that, we're going to go on to our next presenter, which is Dr. Angel Pereira. She's an associate professor from the School of Earth, Environmental and Marine Sciences. And I apologize, Dr. Pereira, because I think I got the wrong title there for your presentation. I know that you were going to share a TED Talk with us, and it is a little lengthy TED Talk, so we're going to keep it short at the end. We probably won't do a Q&A, just ask you to give a final comment after the TED Talk. So if anyone has questions, I'm going to ask you to place the questions in the Q&A box, because we were trying to limit to 10 minutes, but this particular TED Talk goes a little bit over. It's an amazing TED Talk, but it goes into 13 minutes. So we're not going to have a whole lot of time for Q&A. So thank you for that. And Davey, if you could please share the video and welcome Dr. Angel Pereira. Thank you for being with us. So I want to thank Dr. Pereira for sharing this wonderful TED Talk with us. And if we can unmute her, so if you'd like to make a comment or maybe take just one question, but with a very short answer so that we can move on with the program.
All right. Thank you very much, Mrs. Franklin, for this opportunity to share this TED Talk. And thank you, everyone, for following this presentation by Dr. Esmeralda Berge, a professor from UC Merced. And I'm a soil scientist here in the UTRGV, and all the information she shared on the TED Talk, it's very relevant for us and hits home here. And it's very relevant for us since we're in a location where there is a lot of agricultural production and a lot of reforestation happening. But for those of you in the audience that found perhaps this content too dense and too much for a short amount of time, I just want you to take one take-home message, all right? That is to protect soils from erosion by keeping vegetation growing on it, and to protect soils from contamination. That way, soils can keep storing carbon that otherwise would be in the atmosphere, causing climate change. That's the take-home message I would like you to take home. All right, and I'm happy to take questions if there is time or on the chat. I will stay here answering questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pereira. I would ask that anyone with a question, please put it on the chat. And I see that Dr. Gabler raised his hand. Did you want to add something, Dr. Gabler, or did you have a question?
I was just turning on my video and sound, but I wanted to second everything Dr. Pereira said. This is of the utmost importance.
Thank you. So for those of you, we do have some school districts with us. Please make sure to take a screenshot of all our presenters that you might want to reach out to. So I'll leave this on for just a few seconds as we move on to our next presenter. If not, you can always contact us so that we can get you all the information. So our next presenter is Dr. Christopher Gabler. He is another one of our sustainability champions. Dr. Gabler has several projects, amazing projects, both on our campus and within the community. And today he's going to share a presentation on growing vegetables and native trees at the Brownsville Research and Community Gardens. He has an amazing video for us to share all the beautiful vegetation that is happening at our community garden. And so Dr. Gabler is another assistant professor from the School of Earth, Environmental and Marine Sciences and has a joint appointment with the Department of Biology. Welcome, Dr. Gabler. And Davey, if you can please share his video presentation. Thank you.
Gabler, an assistant professor in SEAMS and the Department of Biology here at UTRGV, and I'm going to talk today about growing vegetables and native trees at the Brownsville Research and Community Garden and how you can get involved. The Brownsville Research and Community Garden, or BRCG, is located on the east side of Brownsville campus, just south of the Casa Bella student dorms and west of the campus police station. There are actually two important assets here. On the southern side is what we sometimes call Project Crawfish. This is the food garden where students and community members can grow their own food. And on the north side, which doesn't appear in this old aerial image, is the new UTRGV native plant nursery, where we're growing native Tamaulipan thorn forest trees and shrubs that are being used for regional reforestation. We call the food garden Project Crawfish because it's actually a climate resilient, agroecologically based, watershed food integrated system for husbandry. That's quite a mouthful, but each of these different terms means some specific things about how we're growing food here and what we're doing to manage the soil and the water. If you have interest in this or would like to know more, please contact me because this is beyond the scope of the current talk. The basic idea, though, is that food is produced in three compartments: raised beds, treatment wetlands, and aquaculture ponds. Compartments are hydrologically connected in that order to create what we like to call model watersheds. Nutrient-rich but polluted water can be moved from the aquaculture pond and serve to irrigate and fertilize the plants in the raised bed. As the water moves through the raised bed and through the treatment wetland before returning to the aquaculture pond, the plants, the soil, the fungi and bacteria that live in these beds act to absorb nutrients and purify the water, functioning like a filter. And once the water's moved to the raised bed, this all happens without energy because water's flowing with gravity. The image on the right is a schematic of what this roughly is meant to look like. And this is actually a very low input and extremely low waste system in what's really considered a zero electricity aquaponics production system. Being scientists, we actually created 12 of these model watersheds in the layout shown here so that we could experiment and have replication. Construction of the model watersheds at the BRCG began in January 2017 and started with some heavy machinery doing the large earthwork. After that, a team of undergraduate and graduate students and myself worked with hand tools to fine-tune the shape and size of these compartments. Once they were dug, we put in the necessary plumbing and lined the ponds and wetlands with rubber, as well as the raised beds here you can see built with lumber. This part of the BRCG officially opened in May of 2017, as shown here from our ribbon cutting ceremony. The main objectives of Project Crawfish and the food garden at the BRCG are first, to produce free and nutritious food for students in the local community. Second, to enable and perform research in agricultural and environmental sciences. Third, provide teaching resources for K through 12, undergraduate and graduate students. And fourth, to engage the broader community through public outreach and extension services. If you're interested in any of this, please come join us for food. It's free. You can grow your own, or you can help us grow. All are great. This May, the food garden at the BRCG will have been running for 4 years, and so far we've done a good job of achieving our goals. We've grown and donated over 200 pounds of food, including serving as a distribution point during COVID-19 with a lot of help from the Office of Professional Development. We've had a lot of students working the garden, some for pay and even more volunteers. We've had 9 senior research or thesis projects that use the garden and 16 presentations about that research. 4 courses regularly use the BRCG, and that number will continue to grow. We've gotten a lot of good press and publicity, as well as regularly participating in EarthFest. So we'd love to see these numbers grow, especially student research. So again, if you're interested in getting involved in any way, please contact me. In addition to the food garden, the BRCG is also home to the UTRGV Native Plant Nursery. And like the food garden, this is a major teaching and research resource. So far, we've had 2 federal contracts with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to grow native tree seedlings for regional reforestation. And at this point, we're profitable. Our operation should turn a small profit every year. Looking forward, we can use the nursery to offer new degree programs or job training related to nursery or greenhouse management, forestry or horticulture. And in general, the nursery serves as one of UTRGV's flagship sustainability and community projects. We're doing work that provides a major public need, namely restoration of local ecosystems. It engages multiple communities across the region. It's allowing students to take active roles in restoring ecosystems of the Rio Grande Valley. And our longer term plans will allow the nursery to double as a nature park or arboretum right on the Brownsville campus. We decided to focus on native trees because the Tamaulipan thorn forests of the RGV have very high conservation value. And this is in part because they're home to several endangered species. But we have lost or severely degraded most of these habitats. And this means that many federal NGO and corporate organizations have already invested in reforestation of the RGV. However, the demand for native Rio Grande Valley tree species greatly exceeds the supply that's needed for these regional reforestation projects. And part of the reason for this is because commercial growers tend to avoid local tree species because they have unknown production requirements, which lead to narrow profit margins and difficulties in scaling these up. So basically, the money is there for reforestation, but the trees are not, and we're fixing this. Construction of the native plant nursery began last year in April and started with the teardown of our old aquaponic and vertical hydroponic systems. Here we're beginning construction of new greenhouse tables that can hold tens of thousands of seedlings. And here are those same tables as they near completion. And here we see a detail of the soil media you need to fill 70,000 tree containers. Here, the first phase of setup is complete, and you can see some of the first tree containers are set up and filled on the tables. Fast forward to June, and we already have thousands of individual trees getting started in propagation trays, which you can see in the foreground. In the background, you can see germination trays where we've planted seeds and new sprouts are coming up. It wasn't long before we filled up all our tables and had to expand and set up new tables on the west side of the BRCG. Here we are in July bracing for Hurricane Hannah, which really involved tying down the leading edges of our rows of trays and basically hoping for the best, which we were very lucky. Things went quite well. And here we are in October, near the end of our first growing season, and you can see the lush carpet of tens of thousands of native thorn forest tree seedlings. So we certainly picked an interesting year to start a nursery. You guys may have heard of this COVID-19 thing. It caused a few problems for us. We had a lot of personnel and travel restrictions, material shortages, and delays in delivery. But nevertheless, we had over 40 undergraduates and 6 graduate students participate at the nursery. We grew 12 different native Tamaulipan thorn scrub species. And in all, we grew over 70,000 native trees for local Rio Grande Valley reforestation efforts. Of these, we were able to deliver 25,000 of the right size to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for local planting. And despite our limitations, we were contracted again by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to grow more trees in year 2. And I'll close with this artistically arranged shot of almost 5,000 native thorn scrub tree seedlings, staged for delivery to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. My parting message is to remind you of the UN Sustainability Development Goals and point out that we designed both of these projects with the 17 goals in mind. We're proud to say that these projects address many of the UN goals, denoted here by corn icons to show which goals are addressed by the community garden, and by tree icons to show those addressed by the native plant nursery. I strongly encourage you to take these goals to heart. We have. Keep them high in mind when you're making decisions and planning work, because careful planning and thoughtful design can make you an active part of the solution to our current sustainability crisis.
I'm sorry, I cut that off a little too early. I thought it was over. Thank you, Dr. Gabler. And I really want to open it up to any questions that anyone might have. If you have maybe a comment, since I cut the video off, I think a second or two too early, if you'd like to say whatever it was.
No, that's quite all right. I was just sort of saying thanks for listening and contact me, and here's contact information. So since you've got my email address there, that's just fine. That does the job.
So
and while questions are coming in, I want to point out that this is a great follow, and you ordered these really well, Marinella. This is a wonderful thing to put right after Dr. Pereira's soil talk, because one of the reasons thorn forests are so good at affecting and helping to mitigate climate change is because we believe, because of our local climate and how dry it is, that the thorn forests in South Texas are particularly good at storing carbon in the soil, more so than warm, wet tropical rainforests. So there's better carbon storage, we think, below ground in these forests. We're still actively studying that. But this is one of the best ways we can get involved and help habitats and improve, help mitigate climate change here in our part of the world, is getting involved in the reforestation project.
I agree. This is such an amazing program. It looks like we do have a question. Did the recent frost in Brownsville cause damage to your trees in the nursery? I'm so glad Linda asked that, because I was actually curious. I was thinking about that as you were talking about Hurricane Hannah, the freeze came to mind, and I was curious if you lost any material.
That's an excellent question, and I'm happy to say that we fared very, very well. I bought every canvas drop cloth available at hardware stores in the entire Brownsville region. I cleared out all the Home Depots to get a heavy cotton cloth that we could put over them, and so we covered them for 3 days when it was really bad, and uncovered them for 1 so they would get some light. On the 1 day we sort of had a break, and then it froze again, and we covered them up again. And so we actually lost less than 10% of what we had. So we did very well. And even though these are not, our trees are very hardy. They are adapted for tough climate conditions, but not frost like that, at least. And so we were, we did better than I thought we would. We actually lost very, very few trees, happy to say.
Great. Well, Dr. Gabler, you do have 2 more questions, it looks like, but I'm going to ask you if you can take care of those in the Q&A box so we can move forward with our other presenters, only because I want to be respectful of time for everyone. So do you have access to the Q&A box so you can answer those?
And
Okay.
I'll be around the rest of the morning session. So happy to continue answering questions.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. So we are going to move on to our next presenter, which is a great follow-up. As Dr. Gabler mentioned, I tried to get our presentations in an order that made sense. So Dr. Alejandro Fierro Cabo is another assistant professor who is, again, another sustainability champion on our campus. He is also working with the Nature Conservancy, and I apologize, it is your I believe, Dr. Fierro, it is your title that I made a mistake in, so I'm going to ask you to give the correct title here in a minute. Dr. Fierro is also from the School of Earth, Environment, and Marine Sciences and has a joint appointment with the Department of Biology. He chairs our B Campus USA advisory committee and is part of an amazing project that you're going to hear from. I'm not going to spoil it. You're going to hear about that one at the end here, towards the end. So let's go ahead and open the mic for Dr. Fierro so he can tell us the correct title to the presentation. I am so sorry, Dr. Fierro. I was working really fast last night and I goofed it up and messed up the title, but we do have his presentation ready. So Dr. Fierro, what is the title, the correct title of your presentation?
Sure, good morning. So the title, if I recall well, I have it here, I read it. So the Nature Conservancy and UTRGV partners in thorn forest restoration.
Wonderful. So now you get to hear where all these trees are going. And Dr. Fierro is working with the Nature Conservancy, and he has a wonderful video to share with us about his work. So if you could please, Davey, share that video, and then we'll go to Q&A with Dr. Fierro.
Hello, my name is Alejandro Fierro. I'm an associate professor at UTRGV. I focus mostly on ecological restoration ecology, different aspects of it. We are here at a private protected area known as Southmost Preserve, belongs to the Nature Conservancy. And we are going to talk today about efforts to restore thorn forest, Tamaulipan thorn forest, or Tamaulipan thorn scrub, in the valley, in efforts in collaboration with the Nature Conservancy and UTRGV. Matorral espinoso tamaulipeco, we call it in Mexico, and it's an endangered, today is considered an endangered plant association because about 3% of the original extent remains in US, this side of the river. It also goes to the other side of the river into Mexico, where 15% remains. So it's a threatened plant association. Main threats include, or mostly, are habitat loss and land use change, basically. for agricultural development, for urban development, urban infrastructure, and such. This biome covers South Texas and the half north of Tamaulipas, Nuevo León, and Coahuila states. We're talking about a very special plant association that obviously by the name you may imply that is dominated by thorny species of trees and other woody species, many shrubs. We're talking about 300 species that have been documented that constitute this very unique type of biome or plant association. In these 300 species include herbaceous and woodies, but of the woody species, which is the plant, the dominant plant form, about 1/3 are leguminous plants, so plants of the same family as, for example, the lentils or the soya beans. The species are also common around town. For example, the Texas sage or cenizo is a species from this association. The ebony, the mesquite, the huizache, these are species from this association that are now part of our ornamental species around town. Sabal palm, the palm that you see behind me, is also native and is part of this association closer to the river. There are some protected areas scattered in both US and Mexican sites. 5 state parks in the valley, a couple of state parks out of the valley that are protect this kind of biome. There are 3 national wildlife refuges in the valley that are also covering parts of this biome. In Mexico there is a very large natural protected area, federal natural protected area, Laguna Madre y Delta del Rio Bravo. There is a clear need, urgent need to not just conserve what is left, but obviously to restore a little bit of what has been lost. And in that sense, the Nature Conservancy has been doing a great job. U.S. Fish and Wildlife has been doing a great job for many years. They are promoting restoration of tracts of land, abandoned agricultural land, to connect patches of these forests, corridors, etc. And now UTRGV is working on or joining this effort in collaboration now with the Nature Conservancy.
My name is Sonia Nájera. I work for the Nature Conservancy. I'm the Coastal Plains Projects Director, and we are here at Southmost Preserve in the Low Rio Grande Valley. The Nature Conservancy is a nonprofit international organization with a mission of protecting the land and water that all life depends on. We do that through land protection, through managing and restoring land, working with partners, and doing research. We're a science-driven organization, and science drives our work. Here at Southmost Preserve, we are focused on restoring the Tamaulipan thorn forest. We not only have over 1,000 acres protected and undergoing restoration, but we're also a plant material center. We collect seed from our preserve, from surrounding landowners, the wildlife refuges, so that we can provide seedlings for restoration efforts that are going throughout the valley. We started working with Dr. Alejandro Fierro and UTRGV and developing a partnership so that they could help us test techniques on the ground, and we could also provide a place and a forum so that we could test ecological restoration techniques focused on Tamaulipan thorn forest restoration, with a greater vision of establishing the preserve as a biological field station.
Yo soy Marcos Ruiz y trabajo en la preserva de Southmost. Soy técnico en restauración. Me dedico al vivero de estas plantas que miran aquí detrás de mí, y soy colector de semillas de 52 o 58 clases de árboles. Nosotros las procesamos, las limpiamos, las hacemos crecer, hacemos toda clase de trabajos que ustedes están mirando aquí a mis espaldas. La producción que hacemos año con año es un trabajo permanente que tenemos que hacer para reforestación dentro de la preserva y fuera de la preserva. Quizás podemos hacer 80, 90, puede ser hasta 100,000 plantas por año, cuando tenemos gente suficiente. Y cuando no, 20 o 30,000 plantas es lo que máximo que podemos mover en este vivero. Creo que es un trabajo muy importante para mí y para todos los compañeros que trabajan conmigo. Es colaboración con ellos, me siento más a gusto porque estamos creciendo más.
Hi everyone, my name is Douglas Manhart. I am a graduate student here at UTRGV. My thesis is focused on improving plants' response to transplant shock out when they're planted for restoration purposes. My thesis specifically is focused on understanding how we can improve their water use efficiency. And to do that, we're going to apply several treatments to these plants before outplanting into the field, with the hope that this improves their water use efficiency, so when they're put out into the field, they're able to withstand that stress better and hopefully grow quicker and compete with the invasive grasses and just overall improve restoration efforts in the valley.
I hope you have learned something about the thorn forest, and I hope you will look at the thorn forest around you in a different way. A very important type of vegetation, very diverse. It's not just thorns, it has so much life and so much diversity. And I wish you a happy Earth Day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fierro, Dr. Alejandro Fierro Cabo. This was a great presentation, great follow-up. I know there was a question that came through as Dr. Gabler was finishing up, and I think it's appropriate for both of you. It was a question from one of our educators, 7th grade educators that's online, asking about partnerships. And I think now he has 2 different projects he can partner on, or 2 different faculty he can partner on. And I think the question was relevant to how those partnerships can be set up. So I don't know if you would like to share. Do they just need to contact you, Dr. Fierro and Dr. Gabler, or yes?
Yes, that will be the first step. You should know that perhaps as a preliminary step, volunteering is something, it's an activity that is very welcome at Southmost Preserve. We are now in the phase of finishing the seeding of this new crop of seedlings there. We are in need of a lot of helping hands. So if you want to contact me, and we can plan for a small group of students volunteering, or a Saturday morning, or any other day, that could be the first preliminary step. But yes, we are very much welcoming participation from the community, high schools, middle schools, and also college students.
Wonderful. I also wanted to add that they could always also, aside from partnering with you, they could check out the website for Rio Reforestation, which happens every year. I know both of you take students every year. Every year I go, I see busloads of school districts taking their students there. So if they haven't experienced that would be another avenue in terms of helping with the reforestation of our Rio Grande Valley. Yes,
they're planting the trees that we've grown in at the UTRGV nursery and at the Southmost nursery too. So it's all connected.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. So does anyone have any other questions for Dr. Fierro? If not, so that we can move on to our other presenters. I see one question, but I see it's the same one from before, which is about the frost. Any other questions so that we can move to our next presenter?
I would quickly add that we also have a contract, U.S. Fish and Wildlife contract, to produce seedlings. This is another contract in addition to the contract that Chris Gabler has, and it's going to be our first in the operation at Southmost. And as you know, Chris Gabler's contract is the second in his operation on campus. But both operations are obviously cooperating together, and it's part of the same effort.
My daughter just texted, I have to share with y'all. She's in Austin and she's like, Mom, why did I leave? I want to go work on those projects. I said, come back. So
Everybody's welcome. And this is the busiest time of year. So
yes. So thank you. Thank you both for your wonderful and, you know, your dedication and support to all this. And also, you know, the amazing projects that you've set up for our students and the community at large. Next, I want to introduce you to Dr. Sebastian Interlandi. He's a visiting associate professor at the School of Earth, Environmental and Marine Sciences. You're gonna love this video. I watched it 3 different times. It takes me back to my childhood when I used to go to the farm and spend the summers with my grandparents. And it's just, it's an amazing video. We're moving now from plants to livestock, to animals. We need to understand the relationship that we have, you know, here on our planet with both plants and animals. And Dr. Interlandi has an amazing story to share with you. He's doing some amazing work and we're excited to have him here at UTRGV. And we hope he'll make UTRGV his home here pretty soon. So Davey, if you could please share and welcome Dr. Sebastian Interlandi. It's great to see you.
You too.
Of all the challenges we have to face on this planet, perhaps none is more important to think about on Earth Day than climate change. More frequent and intense drought, storms, heat waves, rising sea levels, melting glaciers, warming oceans, and refugees fleeing these climate disasters are all expected in the coming decades in every region of the globe. And while there are lots of things we can do at home to lower our carbon footprint, like composting and recycling, the most important thing we can do to mitigate these coming disasters is to end our dependence on fossil fuels. Driving less, carpooling, driving more, fuel-efficient or electric cars, insulating our homes better so they are more efficient to cool and to heat. These are all things that can help, but we need to do so much more than this. I'm an organic farmer. This is me and my friend Sammy. I raise sheep and grow potatoes without using synthetic chemicals on my 85-acre farm in upstate New York, and I've worked to build farms in many places throughout the Western Hemisphere. I've seen the confusion farmers face from changing weather patterns and a rapidly shifting global marketplace that is more and more difficult for small family farms to navigate. As farmers, we all know that our industry has a big carbon footprint and that we have a big role to play in meeting this challenge. I got into farming because I love food and being outdoors, growing plants and animals for food to feed my neighbors, for fiber to clothe my family and friends. It's one of the most satisfying callings to have. There's nothing better than bringing my own cheese to share with farmer friends in the mountains of Ecuador and bringing home beautiful alpaca blankets for cold northern winters. But I know that every time I fly to visit them, and every time I use diesel fuel in my tractors, and every time I fuel up on gas for my delivery vehicles, I'm doing something that is unsustainable. Like feeding this little lamb from the bottle, it can't go on forever. We're addicted to something that is hurting us bad. According to the EPA and the World Resources Institute, agriculture is responsible for 10% of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. and 11% globally. The methane released by ruminants, including cows, sheep, and buffalo, is responsible for about a third of all of these agricultural greenhouse gas emissions, meaning that the methane from our animals is ultimately responsible for 3% of all global warming. Depending on who's counting, there are something like 1 or 1.5 billion cows on this planet and 1 billion or so sheep. Further, according to the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations, there are 570 million farms in the world, most of them small family operations. So this is not a point source pollution problem, and it is not an easy one to solve. If there is any solution to the problem of methane from animals on this planet, it is going to take a huge communication strategy among the world's farmers to solve. My farm is on Tug Hill in Oneida County, New York. I raise a small flock of sheep that I use for meat and wool. I also grow potatoes and garlic and dabble in lots of other things. For Creative Shepherd Farm and other farms in the Northeast, perhaps some global warming is actually a good thing. My fields are snow-covered from mid-November through the end of March, and I can easily store water for summer irrigation. As the years go by, productivity for us will likely go up as our earth warms. However, I also work with organic farmers in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas and others of Ecuador, where the changing weather patterns precipitated by climate change are anything but helpful to them. As hurricanes strengthen, droughts lengthen and intensify, and as seasonal rainfall patterns are becoming less predictable, farmers in these regions are having a harder time maintaining organic agricultural systems. It is clear that we can't continue to do things in the manner we have been for the past 100 years, driving global weather patterns to greater extremes and expecting national and global stability to result. For me, as a livestock farmer in particular, the responsibility to change my farming practice is one I cannot overlook. A lot of us have gotten into the idea that local food systems can help us in this challenge, that if we just buy food from farms that are close to where we live, we can solve a big part of the problem with the food system. But it's just not that simple. Half of the Earth's usable land is in agriculture right now, more than ever before, and it is mostly to grow animals. Only about 8% of all the energy used to produce food and get it to consumers is in the transportation. Almost all of the energy is in the production, in the fuel for tractors, the energy used to produce petrochemical herbicides and pesticides and synthetic fertilizers for use in conventional production systems. So being a local food farmer doesn't really help you solve the problem of global warming, not directly anyway. Us small farmers with animals, we like to talk about how healthy it is to raise your animals on pasture rather than on feedlots, how much better the meat is for your family to eat, and how much less stress there is for the animals. And all of this is true. And people sure do prefer to see happy animals ranging out in the grass rather than feeding from troughs full of dusty brown material, pretty much indistinguishable from sawdust to the hand and eye. But the dirty secret is that grass-fed cows produce more methane than cows eating corn and soy meal at feedlots. For all the instinctual revulsion we have to those industrial processes and systems, they are, just like humans when concentrated in cities and have smaller carbon footprints, these systems are more efficient and better for the global carbon budget. But what can we do with the methane problem? For conventional farmers, the idea of a pill or vaccine that can lower or even eliminate methane production for their animals is rapidly becoming a reality. For organic farmers, there is the possibility that natural food supplements made from macroalgae with antimicrobial properties and the ability to inhibit methane generation will soon be available to provide the same benefits. Over the past 20 years, an explosion of research into enteric methane production has included trials of vaccines to eliminate methanogens from the gut and the development of food supplements that contain chemical inhibitors of methanogenesis that prevent methane formation even when methanogenic organisms are present. In 2014, some in vitro experiments with the red alga Asparagopsis taxiformis showed that as a supplement accounting for 2% by weight of a cow's diet, the algae could reduce ruminant methane emissions by up to 99%. What is the exact enzymatic mechanism? Well, bromoform produced by the alga inhibits methane formation in the ruminant gut. As a result, the cows produce more propionate, a larger molecule, which they can get more energy from. Some evidence suggests that cows can potentially grow more and faster on the same amount of feed when the alga is used as a supplement. Much of the world is currently asking the questions, should we even be eating meat? How is it ethical to raise animals for food? Can we grow meat in laboratories instead? And how can we justify the continued use and expansion of live animals in our food system that causes so much harm to our ecosystems? Livestock farmers who love their herds and their way of life need answers to these questions that validate their continued existence. Organic farmers are particularly in need of solutions because it is grass-fed cows and sheep that produce the most methane. By some estimates, grass-fed animals on the range can produce up to 3 times the methane of cows fed optimized corn and soy-based diets in controlled feed systems. Many of us who farm organically value the cleaner meats, more healthy animals, and natural rotational grazing systems of our operations for their aesthetic and human health benefits. But we have to be honest about the external impacts of the decision to raise grass-fed animals on pasture and range. This organic practice as it is now is far from environmentally sustainable. If organic farmers can turn to a natural feed supplement that they can use to reduce the methane production by their animals, we can sleep better at night knowing that we are doing our part to combat the threat of global warming and know that we are providing healthy foods to our customers and our families. Figuring out how to get free-ranging animals to eat a little bit of seaweed every day is certainly going to be a trick. While animals that eat prepared mixed feeds and concentrated operations can easily have their diets altered by the farmer, that's not so easy to do when your cows and sheep are out on the pasture. Nevertheless, the promise of Asparagopsis taxiformis to serve as a global change agent, to come from the ocean and help us solve our ecological problems associated with food production, is a rare opportunity and one that Texas farmers should embrace. As the state with the largest number of organic dairy cows in industrial closed feeding systems and more cows on feedlots than any place else, Texas is a perfect place to use this strategy to make a measurable dent in the greenhouse gas emissions of our society. As you ponder yourself the questions and problems of humans living on this small blue planet today for Earth Day, I ask you to do what you can to support your local farmers who are building community resilience and economies through their development of foods and fibers for their neighbors and friends. If you know where your milk and cheese come from, talk to the people who make it and sell it about this technological revolution coming to the world of animal husbandry. And as a consumer, make good choices about the foods you buy. Eating less meat is best for the planet, but if you're a meat eater, you have choices too. Very soon, it's likely that you'll have the choice of meat and dairy products and fiber, clothing, and blankets, and lots of other farm products that are raised on farms that are working to minimize their greenhouse gas emissions. And you'll see this information on product labels and in advertising campaigns. Making the active choice to consume products from these farms is one way you change the world for the better and make sure we have a beautiful planet for our kids and theirs. Thanks very much, and happy Earth Day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Interlandi. That was wonderful. And I can't get enough of Sammy. I just want to bring Sammy home.
Yeah, I hear you. That little guy, he almost died. We found him lying after a really cold night on the floor of the barn. And it took me a day and a half to revive him. And then he became a baby. So we will never eat him. I am afraid.
I can see why. He's a cutie. I don't know if we have any questions for Dr. Interlandi. I assume that there has to be someone out there with a couple of questions. I invite our other faculty as well, if you haven't met Dr. Interlandi and you have questions for him, to also ask. And how's the house hunting coming along? Have you found anything here in the Rio Grande Valley?
Nothing permanent yet, but you know, it's a crazy real estate market. So we have a bid in on a house right now in San Benito, but who knows whether we end up living there or not.
Okay, well, that's great. So if we don't have any questions, is there anything, excuse me, that you might like to add?
Oh, just that there's a lot of sheep here in the valley. I wish I had some footage that I could have included, but folks have a lot of Barbados sheep, which are hair sheep that are great for meat. And so, like, if people who want to get into raising animals, like chickens are really fun, but if you're interested in small mammals, sheep are really wonderful to have around you. Even if you just have a few thousand square feet that you would like for someone to be your lawnmower, it's nice to have an animal. Some cities will have restrictions on holding livestock, of course, and stuff like that. But I didn't grow up on a farm. I didn't have animals. I just learned because I wanted to live this kind of lifestyle. So I just went and I bought some sheep and I learned how to do it. And I would encourage people to have that kind of attitude as well, whether it's sheep or chickens or anything you want to get into. School groups, if you want to help with that kind of thing, let me know. I'm happy to help.
Speaking of school groups, we do have a question. I love our 7th grade science class that is asking questions today. It says, I have read about a company called Just that grows chickens in labs. How expensive is that process? It says they apparently make chickens without killing the chickens.
Yeah, so what they're probably doing is culturing the meat tissue in the laboratory. Right now it's super expensive, but it has been done on a scale where, like, people who will pay a few $1,000s for a fancy dinner can go and eat a steak that was produced in a laboratory. At this point, it's like that, but I'm sure that at some point it will be an economical solution to our protein needs. And from what I understand, I've never tried any of this laboratory grown, animal protein. It's basically muscle tissue that they just grow in a cell culture strategy. But eventually it will probably be a commercialized product and relatively cheap, I would imagine. It's just a matter of getting the feedstock components available. But you have to remember, if you're going to grow animal tissue, you have to put all kinds of amino acids into the production process. And right now, when they're growing the animal tissue, it may not exactly be vegetarian because they put animal products in to make the process happen. So getting over that hump and figuring out how to grow animal tissue without actually using animal tissue, whether it will be 100% vegan, in concept, is a question that I can't answer, not being an expert in that area.
I see that Dr. Gabler unmuted. Was there something you wanted to ask Dr. Gabler or add?
I was going to ask about algae, but I can talk to Sebastian about that another time. The issue of lab-grown meat is something I've studied a fair bit as a sort of, I wouldn't say reluctant vegan, but somebody who would gladly eat a lab-grown steak. Doesn't normally eat meat, and Sebastian's exactly right. It's an issue of getting the stock source to become sort of make an economy of scale so it can be more affordable. But it's a bit closer, I think, for certain types of synthetic meats. I think they're actually closer on making beef cost effective, like cultured beef, than they are chicken. But that is a super active area of research, and it's coming along very fast. So, but the issues that Sebastian raised are the key ones, is to where do you actually get the source amino acids from, and how sustainable and even vegetarian are they? But it's getting close.
The other direction that we're coming from, obviously, is with the plant-based pseudo meat products, which are coming closer and closer in texture to what actually eating meat is like. If you've ever had one of those,
having team so it bleeds and things. Right?
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. So there's food sciences coming at this from a variety of directions, and there's, it's a wonderful time to be an eater on this planet if you have the resources to pay for foods, because there's all kinds of different food products becoming available for people.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Interlandi. I really appreciate it. Again, for those of you interested in reaching out, please take a screenshot of his information, and we're going to move forward with our next presenter, which is Dr. Robin Chowdhury. He is also an assistant professor at the School of Earth, Environmental, and Marine Sciences. And Dr. Chowdhury is going to speak about diverse gardens for health and sustainability. And so welcome, Dr. Chowdhury. We're going to ask Davey to please share your video so that we can then go into Q&A with you after the video. Davey, are you there? There it is.
Hi, and happy Earth Day. My name is Robin Chowdhury. I'm an assistant professor here at the University of Texas, Rio Grande Valley, and I'm in the School of Earth, Environment, and Marine Science. And today we're going to be talking to you about why the sustainable agriculture can be better for your health and for the environment. And so come with me today as we visit the Hub of Prosperity, our local garden. The Hub of Prosperity is located in Edinburgh, Texas. Today we'll be talking to Stephanie Casper, a research technician at UTRGV and the Associate Director of the Hub of Prosperity.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Casper. I'm the Associate Director here at the Hub of Prosperity Farm. We're a partnership farm between UTRGV and the First United Methodist Church in Edinburgh. Here at the Hub, we focus on research and education to help improve sustainability of agriculture in the Rio Grande Valley.
UTRGV student volunteers help the garden at the Hub. The Hub of Prosperity has dual roles, serving both as a research farm as well as a production farm. Here we see Stephanie trellising tomato plants for many different varieties. Stephanie is researching which varieties perform best under local conditions and keeps track of how much fruit the plants produce, as well as whether they were susceptible to locally important diseases. The Hub of Prosperity serves as a production farm, producing horticultural vegetables and fruits for food pantries and for sale at the student-run farmers market. The Hub is also a research farm where we research sustainable agricultural practices like crop rotation and companion planting. Crop rotation is where basically plants are grown one plant after another rather than sequentially planting the same crop over and over and over again. It helps to reduce the stress on soil and prevents the buildup of soil-borne pathogens. Companion planting is an agricultural practice where different crops are grown together at the same time because they have complementary roles in production. Having diverse crops in your garden and on your dinner plate can help build a nutritious lifestyle. Support your local farmers market by buying locally produced agricultural products. In addition to the benefits of mixed cropping for environment and health benefits, pollinators can also benefit from mixed plantings. Here we see European honeybees visiting basil flowers at the plot at the Hub of Prosperity. Flowers and shrubs can provide important nutrition for pollinators whose populations are in decline globally. Cereal crops are important staples in agriculture because they form a basis of most of our diet. Corn is an important cereal that is native to central Mexico, and it was grown widely throughout North America prior to the European colonization. Most corn is produced in large fields by itself nowadays. This is known as monoculture. There are many practical advantages to monoculture, including the fact that it's easier to plant, grow, and harvest a single crop. Many crops like corn benefit from having more of the plants in the same area, as it often improves pollination in corn ears. In addition, growing multiple crops often requires more labor, which can be more costly. Though monocultures have many practical advantages, they can be limiting too. Monocultures limit the amount of habitat for beneficial insects and pollinators. They can deplete soil more rapidly, and they often require additional synthetic fertilizers. There are many other different types of crops that can be grown in the Rio Grande Valley. Squash is an annual crop that has large yields, produces many pounds of fruit for a relatively small area, and can help to shade out weedy species nearby. Beans can also produce bumper harvests and help to improve soil health by taking atmospheric nitrogen forms in their roots. This nitrogen fixation basically occurs with the help of nitrogen-fixing bacteria that are associated with plant nodules that you see on the roots. These bacteria help to gather nitrogen from the air and give it usable by the plants in exchange for carbohydrates from the plants. There's a type of polyculture known as the Three Sisters planting, where basically corn, squash, and beans have been grown together, and they have been grown together like this for thousands of years. Each of these plants perform a different role in the synergistic planting. Corn plants often grow rapidly and straight up, and they form a staple of the diet. Squash help to shade out weeds, and beans provide nitrogen for the soil and protein for the diet. Here we see a plot of Three Sisters planted at the local organic garden at the UTRGV campus. Though it may look a little bit messy, this cropping style can produce a variety of plants in the same area. In my research, I focus on how plants get disease and how we can use different strategies to control disease. If we see disease on a leaf or on an ear of corn, we can look under the microscope to see if it's caused by fungal pathogens. Fungal pathogens are oftentimes spread by spores. Here we see a sorghum leaf that has been affected by a disease. Many spores from this leaf may blow onto nearby leaves, causing further disease. When we compare the amount of disease that we see in crops, the amount of disease found in monocultures is typically higher than that of polycultures. Why would there be less disease in mixed agriculture? One possible reason is the dilution effect, where spores have to travel a long way between similar plants to get anywhere that they're susceptible. Another effect is the barrier effect, where spores can be blocked from spreading by the canopy of other nearby plants. Third, the effects of disruptive selection, where pathogens cannot evolve to specialize on a single host when there is a mixture of hosts in a single area. Fourth, interactions with non-infectious pathogens can trigger resistance inside of hosts. This induced resistance functions in a similar way to how vaccines work in humans. Finally, even if plants are affected by diseases, compensation suggests that basically that nearby plants may be able to fill in the gaps that were affected by susceptible hosts. And so growing a wide variety of plants all in the same area can help to still produce a wide yield of production. Disease requires a susceptible host, a virulent pathogen, and a conducive environment. Without any of these three partners, we cannot have disease. So by growing resistant hosts, conducive, reducing the amount of conducive environment, and by keeping out virulent pathogens, we can reduce disease. Plant pathogens threaten global agriculture, and we can reduce disease globally if we are able to promote food security by growing our own gardens. Thank you for coming with us. Happy Earth Day.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chaudhuri. I really appreciate you sharing your projects. So now we see all the different projects going on at UTRGV as far as gardens and forestry and growing food and growing trees. I would like to open up for Q&A with Dr. Chaudhuri. Is there a question out there? And Dr. Chaudhuri, while they post their question, do you want to add anything, add any comment?
Thank you all for listening. Growing diverse gardens is really useful. And as we've seen from the recent reductions in the amount of available food that we had during the pandemic, having a backyard garden can help to buffer against any sort of food insecurity that we may experience from global food shortages as well as supply chain issues. So having a backyard garden, it can be really beneficial. So I think that in addition to the potential health benefits, I think that there are also health benefits. I've noticed that myself, gardening in the backyard is really great exercise. So I highly recommend anyone who has a chance to consider planting their own garden. Some crops that grow really well around here are okra. I've noticed tomatoes grow fairly well, peppers grow really well. You can grow squash. And so by planting a diversity of crops, you can actually cover a lot of different ground. I highly recommend people get into gardening.
I really love that you shared the three sisters. When I was growing up, like I said, and spending the summers with my grandparents, my grandmother called it Las Tres Marias, the three Marias. And since my name is Marianella and I do have friends with the name Maria, we always fight about whether we're the squash, the corn, or the beans. It's so funny. I really appreciate that you shared that, because it is a system that really works. It's part of what I understand is permaculture, and one particular type of food providing the nutrients to the other, and the way they work. So I'm happy to see that's some of the practices that you have in your garden. I believe there may be a question in the chat. I'm looking real quick. Oh no, that was a comment. Okay, so Dr. Chaudhuri, if you would like, I would like to ask you if you would like to be part of a grant proposal that the Mission School District is working on right now to establish their own garden for the school district. And I know that they're looking for expertise. I know they've reached out to some of the faculty at the university, and I asked Dr. Gabler and Dr. Fierro as well if that is something they might be interested. I would love to share your names with them. They reached out to us to see if there was anyone. So if you permit me, I'll share their names as they work on their grant proposal. I know they're going after some funding with Rotary International for their grant. I happen to be a Rotarian, and that's why I know. So thank you all for your wonderful presentations. We're going to move forward so that we're respectful of time. And next we have Dr. Julie Mustard, who is also an assistant professor, School of Earth, Environmental and Marine Sciences. And earlier I mentioned to you that Dr. Fierro was part of a wonderful project that I didn't want to talk about because we were going to talk about it later. And this is it. This is called the Pollinator Cantina. And Dr. Julie Mustard is going to share the native plants for native pollinators. This is a really wonderful project that has grown and expanded. They're doing some wonderful work. Again, it involves our students, it involves the community. And I just really love this project. And I also want to share that Dr. Mustard is an amazing photographer, even though that's not what she does. She does more important things than that, but I love her photographs. So if you ever get a chance to visit the Pollinator Cantina website, check out the gallery of photos. They are amazing. So with that, I'm going to ask Davey if he can unmute Dr. Mustard and and give her also sharing rights so that she can share her presentation with us today. And welcome, Dr. Julie Mustard. Davy, I'm not sure we can hear her just yet.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Great. Okay, thank you very much for asking me to talk about the Pollinator Cantina. It is a very exciting project, both in terms of the great insects that we are seeing on the campus, and it's just a really nice place to go for a break. So I'm assuming you guys can also see my presentation.
Yes, we can see it.
Great. Okay, so the Pollinator Cantina is on the Brownsville campus near LHSB and the Biomed building, and next to the Resaca as well. And it was started by funding from the Transforming Our World initiative by the Provost's office in 2017. And then we've also been expanding it recently. And the real purpose of the Pollinator Cantina, there's several points, and one is to provide plants for pollinators. And another point is that you can go to the garden. We have signs, and so it's for people to be able to see what the plants are like and say, hey, that plant's covered with butterflies. I'd like to have that at my house. And then also it's a place for students to do independent research projects, and classes can use it as for research. Before I continue, I just wanted to say one thing. I'm actually not a member of SEAMS. I'm a member in the biology department, just in case you want to look me up. All right, so the Pollinator Cantina is, let me see, it's not. All right, so when you say pollinator, most people think about honeybees, right? You think about that these, of course, are the ones that go out and pollinate our crops. But it's important to realize that the honeybee, Apis mellifera, is not native to North America. So it was brought from Europe by Europeans in the 1600s, and it's now established feral colonies in North America, but it is not native to the Americas. The great thing about honeybees is that they're generalists. So they collect pollen and nectar from lots of different types of flowers, as you can see here. And for agriculture, they are fantastic because you bring one colony to your field and you have tens of thousands of workers in that colony. And so they work really well to pollinate many types of crops. However, some crops are better pollinated by native bees. And as you'll see in a minute, one reason for that is if you can see the bee in the upper right-hand corner, you can see she has a big ball of pollen on her leg. And the honeybees have a special structure on their leg that allows the bees to make big balls of pollen and compact it on there very well. So they're not as good at spreading pollen as many native bees. So as well as not visiting certain types of flowers, they also are not as good at spreading pollen because they have that special structure. So when we look at native bees in the garden, native bees are really understudied in the Rio Grande Valley. Our colleagues up the road in Mission at the Butterfly Center have started looking at their native bees, and they have documented over 50 different types of species, but I'm sure there's many, many more. And native bees may be more efficient at actually spreading pollen. So if you look at the picture in the lower right-hand corner, you can see a native bee, and you can see how much pollen that bee actually has spread out over its whole body. So unlike the honeybee, who just had that one very compact ball, when this native bee visits flowers, she has pollen all over these little hairs. And so she actually spreads more pollen around on the next plant. Okay. Also, native bees may specialize on specific flower types, and they may also visit flowers that Apis mellifera, the honeybee, does not. Native bees nest mainly in burrows or in the ground. So 70%, 75 to 80% of native bees actually nest in the ground. And then about 20 to 30% of native bees nest in holes in stems. So when you cut a stem and there's a little center part that they can clear out where the little pulpy bit is, so they actually nest in those stems, or they may nest in holes that are made by other insects in wood. So in growing trees or tree stumps, so in dead wood. So it's important to have a mix of both of having these native bees, because they really help with pollinating a wide variety of flowers. So butterflies, of course, are something else that people think about in terms of pollinators, but they actually do not collect pollen. So bees, both the honeybee and native bees, collect pollen to feed to their young, but butterflies do not actually collect pollen. So it wasn't really, they weren't really considered to be good pollinators. But a recent study just showed that pollination by butterflies and flies contributed at least $120 million a year just to the cotton crop in Texas. And so they do actually act as significant pollinators. And part of it is because they visit different flowers on the plants than honeybees do. So they visit the same types of plants, okay? And in this case, they were looking at cotton, but they actually visit flowers on different parts of the plants, which is very interesting. So the pollinator garden and work here we can do in the Rio Grande Valley is really important, because 40% of the total number of butterfly species that are found in the US visit the Rio Grande Valley either as a permanent resident or during migrations. So by planting native plants in our yards and in the butterfly garden, we are able to support those many species of butterflies. It's also important to make sure when you're thinking about supporting butterflies that you realize that they have 3 distinct life stages, and you need to provide resources for each of those life stages. So the adult butterflies are generalists, and they feed on a wide variety of nectar plants. The caterpillars, however, are usually require a specific larval host species, right? So larvae is the specialized word for a caterpillar. Okay, and you can see here we have a monarch butterfly feeding on milkweed, and monarch butterflies only lay eggs on milkweed. And this is a fritillary butterfly feeding on passion flower. And again, that is the larval host plant. And you also need to have protected areas for them to undergo metamorphosis. So you can see here's a chrysalis of a couple of different species, the fritillary and the monarch. And they need protected areas so that they can be protected and undergo metamorphosis. So when you're thinking about planting a garden, you need to make sure you have areas that contain all of those. Flies actually also act as pollinators. We don't usually think about them, but again, they do not collect pollen, but they feed on nectar. And so when they're feeding on nectar, they get pollen on their bodies, and then they transfer that pollen to the next plant. So again, some studies are starting to show that they have a significant impact on pollination. And again, that they may visit different plant types, and they also visit different parts of the flower, parts of flowers on different parts of the plant compared to bees. So we really want to think about all our different kinds of pollinators when we're designing a garden. And here's a couple of pictures. The pollinator cantina The construction and maintenance has been done by students. The garden contains over 40 different species of plants native to the lower Rio Grande Valley. And we have larval host plants as well as nectar plants. And we also have a nesting habitat for native bees to try and provide extra space for them. So I just want to thank the garden. Like I said, it's been maintained and constructed by students. So our students are totally awesome. We also have the UTRGV facilities group as our collaborators. And we had an initial grant to start the garden from the Transforming Our World initiative. We've also received money from the USDA, which has allowed us to expand and enhance our garden. We've had donation of compost from the city of McAllen, also donation by Lowe's, and the Department of Biology supports a work study student to actually work in the garden. So with that, I'm very happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Dr. Mustard. This was wonderful. I'm so happy that you had the opportunity to share this project with us. I know that we have a couple of educators, high school educators. I don't know if they might have any questions, or any of our students on how to reach out to volunteer. We did lose some plants during the freeze, and so we need probably the help of our students to start replanting some pollinator plants for all our gardens, but specifically the pollinator garden, as we are designated as a Bee Campus USA institution thanks to this wonderful garden and some of the other gardens, smaller gardens we have throughout the two campuses in Brownsville and Edinburgh. So we're really excited about that designation. And if we have any of our community members who work with the cities, there is a Bee City USA. So if anyone would like to pursue that and would like help with that, we've been through the process, we'd be happy to help. So it would just be a matter of reaching out to us at UTRGV. With that, I'm gonna check and see. I think we have a question for you. It says, do you know how significantly the different pollinators were impacted by the freeze? Are pollinations recovering already, or will it take more time?
Well, the pollinators, so we don't really know. Unfortunately, we had not been gathering data beforehand. So to be a really good comparison, we would need to be have data from beforehand so we could compare it to now, but we haven't, our garden hasn't been established that long, so we don't really have a good data set. But overall, the freeze impacted pollinators in two different ways. And one, of course, was the cold weather, but usually insects can decrease their metabolism, and a lot of times they can actually survive relatively cold weather if they then have some food. And that was the real problem, was that the freeze destroyed all of the flowers and destroyed all of the food. So the big impact from the freeze was on insects was probably due to the lack of food, because the plants were just starting to flower, the pollinators were just starting to come out and kind of ramp up their reproduction. And so it was really not a good time to have a cold front. I do want to mention that in the garden, we did lose a few plants, but we only lost a very few native species. Most of our native species died back maybe to the ground, but they made it through and they're coming back, and the garden is actually really resurged. So for those of you who have planted some tropical plants in your yard that died, when you're thinking about replacing them, you might want to think about replacing them with some native species instead of species of plants that are not native to the area and therefore aren't good larval hosts for butterflies. They might not be good for our native bees. So take the opportunity to replace your dead plants with native plants.
So Dr. Mustard, we have one last question. It says, for some of us that would like to have a garden but don't know nothing about it, Where can we begin?
Well, one place you can begin is by looking at the Pollinator Cantina website at UTRGV. So we talk a little bit and we have some pictures of different pollinators on different flowers. Of course, you can visit the garden, and we do have signs that tell you what kind of a plant it is. Again, it's a little bit weird right now because the plants are just kind of springing back, but you can see different plants in the garden and see what they're like. And the Cantina website also has places that you can go to buy native plants, and some general considerations about when you're making a pollinator garden, what are the things you should think about.
I do believe you also have a list of all those native plants, correct? So that they can choose from that list?
We do have a list of native plants on there, and we're updating with the new plants that we've gotten in our expansion of the garden. So we're updating our website.
Great, great. So I have a quick question for Dr. Gabler and Dr. Fierro. Since you're both working, with different agencies as far as your nurseries, is there any chance you might start growing some native pollinator plants so that we can have them for all these gardens? And also so they could be planted among, this real reforestation that's being done, that there's also some pollinators there.
Yes.
Absolutely. And a lot of the woody plants are fabulous for pollinators. It's not just annuals and small, herbaceous plants that pollinators love. Many of the trees we grow have flowers that are small and abundant and are covered in pollinators and butterflies, and also serve as host plants. So absolutely.
Yeah, and I would mention that for the second phase of the pollinator garden, the large majority of the plants came from Southmost Preserve, where we are growing now the trees. We also grow some herbaceous native species and small shrubs that are now part of the second phase of our garden. So we grow those.
And I said it was the last question, but I have another one. Will you in the near future be able to sell some of these plants from the nursery to the general public, to the community, when we're having farmers markets or things of that nature? If we want to buy native plants and UTRGV is growing them, can we buy them from UTRGV?
That is a great question. It is our plan to do that. Some of the species we grow, we get our seed from Fish and Wildlife Service. And when we do that, we're sort of bound to return everything we grow with that seed to them. And so it's sort of to conserve their own limited seed supply. But we're actively trying to wild collect our own seed stocks, and we can do whatever we want with those, include exactly what you're suggesting, and that is the plan. Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
And I know that's already happening at Southmost.
Yeah, that's true. And at Southmost, we don't have the issue of buying seeds. So we collect our own seeds, and we have the capability to produce plants for specifically more adapted for gardens, like not trees or thorny shrubs, but other plants that are also native. So, and I think the selling would be relatively easy through the partnership with the Nature Conservancy. So they can be actually the entity that makes the invoice, for example. If administratively UTRGV is not ready for that, but yet. So that's a real possibility coming from Southmost, at least.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Marianella, I just wanted to point out, as Chris touched on, in urban environments, it's been shown that trees actually provide the largest source of pollen for bees. So when you are thinking about planting a tree in your yard, that you can make a huge impact on pollinators by planting a pollinator-friendly tree. And we are in the process of marking pollinator-friendly trees on the Brownsville campus. So you will be able to walk around and say, hey, this is a great tree, it looks pretty, and it would contribute to pollinators.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to all of you. This concludes our session, our morning session. I know some of our students are already leaving for class, but before you leave, I do want to share with you that tonight at 6 p.m., We are going to be screening the movie Kiss the Ground. And what I'm going to do, instead of tell you what this movie is about, I'm going to ask Davey if he can share the movie trailer, because we do hope that you will join us. It's an excellent movie. It also contributes, the information you're going to get from this movie contributes to Sustainable Development Goal number 15. You've already heard some of our faculty talk about this. In fact, when you collectively bring all our faculty together and all the presentations you heard, you're going to hear all that within this movie as well, and some more with more detail. So please, Davey, if you can share the trailer, and then we will wrap up with some thank yous, and we will see you later on tonight, I hope.
There's so much bad news about our planet, it's overwhelming. Truth is, I've given up. This is the story of a simple solution, a way to heal our planet. The solution is right under our feet, and it's as old as dirt.
All of our soils that are under chemical conventional agriculture are almost completely devoid of microorganisms.
Modern agriculture was not designed for the betterment of the soil.
Fossil fuels are by no means the only thing that is causing climate change. When we damage soils, carbon goes back to the atmosphere.
But when we destroy soil, it releases carbon dioxide.
Biosequestration is using plants, trees, and techniques of grazing and farming to capture carbon and store it in the soil.
We can fix a lot of our climate issues if we bring the CO2 down into a living plant and put it back into the soil where it belongs.
Plants working with soil microorganisms, it seems too simple.
Healthy soils lead to a healthy plant, healthy human, healthy climate.
There could be a way to eat food that heals the planet.
The problem isn't the animal. The problem is where the animals are at.
How do we take waste and repurpose and reuse it, because it's really not waste? The poop has to stay in the loop.
Compost is just one of a suite of soil-based carbon capture solutions.
We know how to do it. And if we continue to scale over 30 years, we can reverse global warming.
We can get the Earth back to the Garden of Eden that it once was by regeneration. To see biodiversity return to a place that was completely devastated.
That gives me hope.
Our health and the health of our planet are connected.
If you look over here, my neighbor's land that has been chemical fallow, then you look over at our paddocks, you have a diversity of different plant species. Which model do you want your food to be produced from? The answer is pretty simple to me.
I'll make you a deal. I won't give up, and neither should you.
So this is the movie we'll be screening tonight from 6 to 8. So I hope you will join us. It is a different link from today's link, from this morning's link, but I did put all those links in the chat box for all of you to take a look at. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and I hope that you'll join us tonight and then join us again tomorrow morning. We're going to be looking at the Sustainable Development Goal number 14, which is life below water. Now for that one, it'll be the same link as this morning at the same time from 9 to 10:45. And so this is the schedule we have for tomorrow. As we look at life below water, we'll be hearing again from our students who are going to share the Sustainable Development Goal number 14 and what they found here in the Rio Grande Valley. We also have NRDC, Protect the High Seas. Sea Turtles Inc. is going to share a video with us. We have Dr. Christopher Gabler again with one of his other projects regarding sea level rise and climate impacts. Dr. Shelby Bassett, who's going to share about plastic pollution. And so I hope that you will join us. I want to thank you all for your continued dedication, commitment, and support towards education for sustainable development. Thank you to all our attendees, our presenters, our community partners. I want to give a special thank you as well to the School of Earth, Environmental, and Marine Sciences. They are our partners in this. We couldn't do this without them. Also, we have collaborations from the Staff Senate, the Alumni Relations Office, the Division of Research Graduate Studies, and new program development, specifically their IT support, Mr. Hector Solis and Mr. Davy Salazar, who helped us today in making sure everything ran smoothly. Thank you, Davy. We will be hearing from UTRGV Sustainability Fellows as well in the coming days, and the Math and Science Academy Ambassadors for Sustainability. You heard them today, you'll hear them again tomorrow. And last but not least, I want to thank the Office for Sustainability staff, the office assistants, the graduate assistants, and the interns. All these beautiful graphics are done by our students in the office. They also do an amazing job of making sure all of this is posted on social media. They're just such great support. And again, I want to thank them for all the hard work they put into getting all of this program put together for us to have an amazing virtual Earth Fest. So happy Earth Fest once again. We will see you all tomorrow. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day and a wonderful rest of the week. And well, I hope that you're there tomorrow. All these presentations are amazing, just as today. They're just different topics. So have a good day, and we will see you soon. Thank you.